watching Morning at NTV.
Good morning at NTV, and many thanks for staying with us. My name is Rami Bisik. Of course, we are getting into another contentious conversation, the 2021 election on January 14th. Now, in the run-up to this election, we do have a new development. The Electoral Commission on Saturday did proclaim that electoral activities within Kampala and 15 other districts were to be cancelled. So how best were the other candidates, especially from the opposition, going to canvass for support or send a political message to their electorates? Well, we do have Oscar Kihika. He's the Director Legal from the NRM, and I also do have Lutamaguzi Semakula. He's a member of DP Stroke People Power, like he contends, and he's the MP Nakaseke South. He's still running this time round, but under the DP ticket. Gentlemen, a very good morning. Mr. Kihika, would like to know if the Electoral Commission proclamation on Saturday to bar electoral activities within Kampala and 15 other districts was done under the law.
It was certainly done under the law. When you read the press statement that the chairman of the Electoral Commission released, he was quoting particular sections of the Electoral Commissions Act, the Parliamentary Elections Act, the Local Government Act, insofar as it relates to election of candidates in the local government, and the Electoral Commissions Act. So what the EC did was under the law, was perfect, was backed by the law.
Mr. Lutamaguzi, do you also share the same sentiments with Mr. Kihika that the Electoral Commission did this under the law?
First, let me greet my people.
Indeed.
Nakaseke South who are watching NTV this morning, and all Ugandans who are watching this program this morning. Yeah, I didn't hear what he said.
He said the Electoral Commission was rightly under the law when they proclaimed that 15 districts or 16 districts should cancel electoral activities.
The Electoral Commission is acting political. And you know, we call it Independent Electoral Commission, but it's not independent. It's actually, it looks like an arm of NRM. Whatever NRM thinks about what they do, you see how they act. They act as if they are under the pressure of NRM, not in the interest of all parties, all candidates who are contesting. So if you look at the face of Biamukama and his colleagues who are manning NRM, they are predominantly NRM cadres. So they are not working in the interest of Ugandans, they are working in the interest of the regime head, that is Mr. Yoweri Kahaburwa, and the NRM cadre. So if you tell me that when we started the campaign, it's only yesterday when discovered that the corona is affecting Ugandans much, then I wonder. And you know, and even NRM people know that in these areas where Museveni is not popular, they are the areas which they chose not to campaign. Because if you know that corona is there, yes, it is there, but does it mean that we shouldn't campaign? We should have cancelled the whole election rather than denying people rights to see their candidates. How will they vote without hearing or seeing them? And you know, Mr. Tikahabura Museveni has been encouraging all candidates to use social media, to use the TVs, but they hack even the pages of social media. They don't allow other candidates to talk freely on TVs. So they are trying to play some kind of monkey games, but we're Ugandan, and you know what is been all along, right from the bushes of the well where I come from. You cannot just take it that Biabakama said. Did he just see it yesterday or today? Because even Mr. Museveni Tikahabura has been making campaigns with huge rallies. You saw what happened in Western Uganda when he went there. Do you mean in Western Uganda there are no coronavirus? And if you look at the statistics of the districts per corona affections, they don't tally with what the Electoral Commission is saying. There are districts which are much more affected by coronaviruses as per the indications of the health ministry, which are where people are still campaigning. So it's just more of a political game. They are trying to play on the minds of people, and you know those guys in the Electoral Commission are not working independent. Most of them are NRM cadres, and even you look at the Justice Biamukama in the face, even it looks like he wants to run away. Pretends as if it's just there in the chair by force by someone taking some orders, and it's not in Uganda. We actually feel pity on him.
Mr. Lutamagus, you're saying that the Electoral Commission is favoring the NRM, but the president himself came out and he said he was the most affected. He was the most affected by this declaration by the Electoral Commission. Don't you think you might be, you know...
But you know the tactics of Mr. Tikahabu, that those are his games. He can box you and at the same time cry with you. Don't think that whatever he's saying is in the interest of the country, or is just feeling pity that Ugandans are dying. If it was so, then he would have acted early on before he visited some areas where he collected people on the streets. He knew that in these areas where he's supposed to go, he wasn't popular, and people are not going to welcome him. That's why he tried to play some kind of games that now Corona is killing people, now I'm feeling sorry for my people. He knew that people would not go where I was going, and he just used the Justice Biamakama. And I told you, Justice Biamakama is not independent. When you see the way he acts, and you also aware, you people from the media, that to be appointed as a chief of electoral commission, you have to be a chief cadre of NRM. And I'm not wondering with whatever he's doing, because he's supposed to do what the master tells him. If the master tells him, even there will come a time when he tells us that maybe in a certain area the president is not happy. Did you see what happened the other day in Karanga?
Bobby Wine was airlifted.
You fail soldiers as if we're in a war. We've been asking Justice Biabakama, are we in a war such that we can prepare ourselves for the war? You bring all these kind of soldiers, they put on even these guns as if they're in the war, they beat Ugandans, they kill Ugandans. Biabakama is very silent, as if he's not seeing anything. So when it comes to Mr. Tikahabu's statements, then after all, what can Justice Biabakama say? These people told you that Uganda is their animal. They can do whatever they do. If you try to correct them, they tell you, did you go to the bushes of well? As if there is a group of Ugandans that looked at them as if they are only fittest Ugandans to go to the bushes and fight for us. So, looking at whatever is happening in the country, you have to know as media people, even if you are beaten every day, I see bloodshed, you ask these people, has Justice Biamukama ever come out and condemn such acts of violence meted on media people? This person is just a messenger. They beat them, they use the army. In fact, even some of these policemen are powerless. We blame them for nothing. They get goons, I don't know, from somewhere. They put them in the police uniforms and they start beating people. The other day, you hear some ministers at the media center, in fact, being happy, condoning what's happening, that we shall shoot as if we're shooting animals, not human beings, to pay taxes for them to survive in such luxurious positions where they are. So I'm not wondering with the statements from Justice Biabakama. Justice Biabakama, if you are watching NTV, we know you were part of NRM. We know you are not independent. We also know you didn't go to the bushes of well. Those big men who went to the bushes of well are the ones who are supposed to know where this country is supposed to be steered, rather than the interests of all parties, especially running for president.
Very intriguing statements made by Lutamaguzi, Mr. Kihika. Oscar, what do you make of all this?
Well, first of all, he didn't quite address the question that you had put to him, and then he went all over the landscape, making a number of outrageous statements. But I'd like to put the record straight. Number one, and I'm now responding, I think I answered your question.
Yes, you did.
Now, responding to the various allegations that he has made, number one, our candidate, President Museveni, has been campaigning within the guidelines that were stipulated by the Electoral Commission. Nowhere has he gone where he has collected large numbers of people, as my colleague was falsely claiming and exaggerated, that is called large rallies. He has not. The NRM has not at any one point called large rallies, because we are painfully aware of the COVID situation that is pertaining in the country. In fact, we had to bring to order, one of our members, who I think within a couple of days after the campaign season was opened, who was the minister, remind me, who called an election, a campaign. I think, was it Honorable Chiwando or something like that?
Kasolo,
yes.
and many others.
No, and we have been on record. Exactly. We were absolutely upset, right? In our weekly press conference, we actually asked the police to have them arrested and interrogated about the actions that they took, because we are a law-abiding party that believes in the rule of law. And that's why the president, wherever he has gone, right, has not held campaigns in the manner that my colleague here was stating. So that is an exaggeration, okay? Whenever crowds have sprung up, whether the president has come, he has been at pains to tell them, please do not. To the extent he has stopped stopping, because he knows that when he stops in a place, then people are going to what? To congregate. So, please, Honorable Tamagosi, please do not, as you people typically tend to do not mislead the public with your outrageous and outlandish proclamations.
Mr. Kihika, the president is now on official government business, but the opposition members still contend that he's campaigning within these jurisdictions where electoral activities were banned.
No, excuse me. You know, the incumbency, being an incumbent, and being a candidate doesn't stop you from executing your official roles. The president will remain the president, okay? And he's entitled and is required indeed by law to govern this country, even during campaign periods. And we will always move with the instruments of power, okay? Why is it that the same is not said of President Trump, for example? He had the instruments of incumbency because he had to continue governing as he was campaigning. Indeed, in the British system, right, the party in power tries to take advantage of incumbency as much as possible. So that is a tired argument. I mean, in fact, in Britain, it is much worse. If you're going to complain about incumbency, it's much worse than here, because the sitting prime minister is the one to determine on the date on which elections are going to be held, right? And it can be a snap election. So there's no British prime minister, or there's no party that is going to choose in Britain a day to go to the elections when they know they're going to lose, right? So that is the advantage of incumbency. So that, please, again, that's another tired argument.
Mr. Otamagos, it is a tired argument. The president is exercising the powers of the incumbency and is not campaigning. What do you say about that?
But he's abusing them. Why is it that he opens up roads during campaign times? This is a time when he's opening up roads which are even constructed a long time ago, 3-4 years back. It's the time when he's opening up markets. For us, we know he's doing his campaign, though he's using some kind of gimmicks. A president who can go somewhere and that president and he uttered that he hasn't seen any person whom he can hand over power. It's as if he owns Uganda. It's as if these people in NRM told Mr. Museveni that Uganda is his company, so he can do whatever he wants. Yes, we know he's a president. But that doesn't mean that he should behave as if Uganda stops with himself and maybe with the NRM. We all have equal shares in this country. It's not only Mr. Museveni Kahaburwa and his men who own Uganda. Uganda is for all Ugandans. No one is supposed to order to shoot any Ugandan here. We had the other time with the Minister of Security in the broad daylight that we shall shoot them. We are shooting Ugandans as well, because you have all equal shares in this country. If you didn't know Mr. Museveni and his groups of NRM, they are panicking. They never expected the Chagulanyi Center to put them where they are now. So they are looking for quick solutions of which they cannot get. Like, for example, if I can ask, why do you arm soldiers to start shooting citizens of Uganda who have nothing in their hands? Broad daylight. You start following the Chagulanyi as if he's a criminal. Does it mean to stand with Mr. Yoweri Kahaburwa Museveni in position of a presidency that you become an enemy of Uganda? The other time I heard Mr. Tikabura Museveni say, these enemies of Uganda, which enemies? Uganda is for Ugandans. Uganda is not for NRM. Uganda is not for those people who went to the bushes of, well, after all, no one sent them there and they went to fight for their own interests. We thought that they can learn from history. These are the same people are blaming me, they are blaming Obote, but if you look at what they are doing to Uganda, in fact, this regime is worse than the regime of Obote. I come from well-trial.
But Mr. Lutamaguzi,
yes.
During the Amin regime, 500,000 people were killed. During the Amin regime, 500,000 people were killed.
How many
You're comparing those regimes to the Uganda to the Museveni regime. It doesn't make any sense, Mr. Lutamaguzi.
It makes a lot of sense. Who counted those people? I'm asking you from
the literature is there. 500,000 people were killed.
Written by who? These are the same people who write such kind of fake literature.
So you don't believe 500,000 people were killed during the Obote and Amin regimes?
You know how many people died in the World Trial? You know how many people died in Kasese? You know how many people were lost in northern Uganda? You know how many people we have lost in eastern Uganda under this guys of Lakwena, whatever, these other people, the Conis. Where is Koni today? We could think that after these people have learned from history, they could prepare smooth transition of power. They have over-invested here. You could not even believe that these people were almost want to make Uganda ungovernable. They own almost 70% of Uganda's wealth. But we are trying to talk to them peacefully, because some time back, Ugandans used to tell us that you people, you talk bad. Why can't you talk in a certain way that can convince His Excellency President Museveni to hand over powers peacefully? We've tried our best. But the more we try it, the more these people pretend that Uganda is their company. They cannot even allow it. Can you imagine, why do you beat pressmen? I've seen most of them even almost losing their lives. They just get their pens just to go and write to make a report. They beat them, but after all, even if they beat you, where will you run to? When you go to these institutions where are supposed to run, they are all waiting orders from above. They beat you on the head, someone will report, oh, that one was beaten on the toy. After all, was not beaten by our soldiers, but he was beaten by ABCD. So until when these people realize that Uganda is for all Ugandans, that what they are trying to sow, we shall reap all. Because after all, even if the other day you put up curfew everywhere, their children also not move anywhere. They should know that the looting of this country, these people have overlooted our country, that Ugandans are not very happy. If you know that your people have been looting Uganda for almost 40 years, and you have impoverished Ugandans, they have waited for all along, and you put up an election, because an election is constitutional. But you make it as if it is a war. You call Ugandans your enemies because you are competing with you. Excuse me, this colleague of mine is not my enemy. It's my competitor. Despite the fact he's in a different political party, I'm not allowed to shoot him. I have no rights whatsoever to kill his children, his wife, or even himself. But when you look at the way these people are running this country, it's as if we're in a war.
Mr. Oscar Kihika, Lutamaguzi has made a very, very colour statement. He contends that the Museveni regime is worse than the Amin and Obote regimes put together. As a legal scholar, do you see any comparisons or similarities between the regime that is and those regimes that were back in the days?
You have said your bit, Honourable Lutamaguzi, and as usual, I'll repeat, you have taken us again all over the landscape. It's very difficult to follow his discussion because he jumps from one thing to another.
Yeah.
But let me start with, you asked me a question about whether this regime is worse than Obote's or Idi Amin's. I lived through both of them, and I can tell you that this regime brought quite a bit of a difference. The discourse that we're having, and this you know, this discourse that we're having, this discussion would not be possible in the Obote 2 days that okay, and in Amin's days. I lived those times. Okay, so Honorable Lutamaguzi, you see, your weak attempt to write history, right, will not deceive the rest of the masses or the viewers viewing this program. However, That is not to say that things have been perfect. There's nothing that's perfect.
Thank you.
And you see, the mere fact, they only listen to one aspect of the message that is coming from NRM, right? The first thing that this government did was to normalize the situation, ensure that people's rights were respected. A constitution was introduced, right? That is supposed to be the basis. After that, moving forward, Ugandans expect better. That's what the discussion that we should be having, right? And the honest discussion is what we should be having. Yes, people expect more of the government. They are not satisfied that they are, in certain areas. We cannot do everything at the same time. But you have to acknowledge the fact that there has been progress, okay? The question is, what more can be done? And indeed, there's a lot more that has got to be done. And that's the message that the NRM is sending out to the people. The people will then, when they go to vote, will decide and say, have we done well enough, right? If not, then they'll give another group another chance, okay? Unfortunately, I'm not going to personalize this.
It's okay.
I'm not going to personalize it. But you see, there are some elements of the opposition who want to be anarchists, okay? You can see very clearly that right from the outset, they decided to adopt a position of defiance, okay? Whenever rules and regulations are put in place, they said, no, we're not going to do that, okay? Indeed, they tried going to the courts. For example, and this is on record. One, when the SOPs were introduced, okay, it was the opposition that went and challenged this matter in court, right? The decision came out and said, the court made a decision and said, look, the SOPs are law, and are lawful and they can be enforced. Yes. There are two decisions to that effect. What do you expect of law enforcement officers with how do you expect them to react when you've got people who are intentionally breaking the law? Unfortunately.
So in incidences where security people shot and killed people that were provoked by those supporters?
Well, that's the point I was going to come to. Unfortunately, in instances when they are trying to keep law and order, they have actually gone overboard. And we have been on record as well in our weekly conferences condemning these forces because they are standard operating procedures, right, within the securities, right? Even the president himself said, look, we're going to make an audit. Why were you shooting aimlessly, right? Stray bullets. What was the intention of the stray bullet in the first place? Where was it going? That's, you see? So the thing is this, our position, and that's where, going back to answer your question, no such discourse was possible in Amin's days or in Oboteto's. So it is comparing oranges and apples, really. And that is where I take issue with this dishonesty. That's why I take this issue with this dishonesty, okay? So,
of course, we are not where we want to be, but we are not where we used to be during the Amin and Obote regime. Yeah, exactly. But he also mentions one thing. He says that there is a reluctance by the president, even though he loses this election, to hand over the mantles of power to people who are not ideologically ready. We've had this rhetoric being sounded by Colonel Dewa Kiki. Brigadier Deus Sande also mentioned that they cannot give over power to a group of people that are ideologically bankrupt.
I strongly disagree with my colleagues, all right, in that respect. The president has been very, very clear on several occasions. He says that Uganda is not a monarchy. Okay, you cannot hand over power to just anybody. The constitution is very clear. It is through elections. All that you hear is opinions, and some, for example, I strongly disagree with the opinion of the army officers who said that they cannot give. No, the power, the constitution is very clear, belongs to the people. That is clear, right? And you cannot change that. The people are the ones who have to decide who our leaders, who they want their leaders to be. You cannot impose a leader on the Ugandans under the current constitutional dispensation, right? And NRM does not describe officially to that kind of thing because one of the core principles of the NRM is democracy and nationalism.
One of the core principles of the NRM is democracy and nationalism. On that point of democracy, Mr. Lutamaguzi, do you feel like since the restoration of multi-party politics in 2005, do you feel like multi-party politics and democracy in Uganda has developed for the last 15 years?
It can't develop.
We are having the same people today who used to disturb Amini's regime. The same people used to disturb Obote's regime. You can't have the same people in different governments and expect different results. Mr. Tikahabura Museveni was in Amini's regime. He was also in Obote's regime. He told you 1969. These are the same people who went to visit Mozambique and they started fighting Uganda. So even today, however much you talk about democracy, their democracy just is in words. There are so many people who are being kidnapped day and night. I come from Nakaseke, where these people went and hid for 5 years. They never left us with anything developmental. Anything is in Nakaseke, these people are put up. But today, right? What? Yeah, today they are kidnapping our people in Nakaseke. The other day some gunmen came at Semuto Town Council. They were showing them guns that if you don't vote NRM, we are going to shoot you. Then all over the country, prisons are full of young men. Mr. Tikahabura Museveni is a citizen of Uganda like a Rutamaguzi. Whether you were Munyankore, whether you were Muganda, whether you were Munyarwanda, whether you are Nachori, whether you are an Indian, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim, you deserve better for this country. We are all Ugandans. Whether you are in NRM. But there are some people in this country, because they have overstayed in power, who behave as if Uganda is their property. It's their inherent property that other people are supposed to talk about their rights, that some rights are actually taken to be privileges. It is my right to stand as a member of parliament. It is other people's rights to support their political parties. Today we are talking about elections. But these people have been rigging elections. And we warned these people of NRM. If you manage to manipulate Besigye, you try to manipulate Kyagulanyi. That's why they are panicking, because they know they are playing with the wrong button. We told them, you can't play with your election. You played with Besigye and you played with your chief injustices who are there, and they tried to play around with Ugandans that because of the effect of substantiality, however, unfortunately, let Mr. Tikahabura continue. We told them, you guys, you've been playing with the other man, but this time we are determined to change the course of this country. We will not remain poor as these smaller Kakuno people are enriching themselves countrywide. They are grabbing lands everywhere. If you go to what is happening in the cattle corridor, I come from Nakaseke, where these people fought from. But when you look at the square miles these people are owning from the cattle corridor, from Ruwero, from Nakaseke, from Nakasongola, from Chiboga, from Mubende. The other time I see His Excellency the President. When you were in Nakaseke, you people had nothing of land here. But your colleagues, the generals, the colonels, are owning chunks of lands here in the cattle corridor. Where did they buy it from? They are displacing the poor citizens because the poor citizens of Uganda have no rights in all institutions of Uganda. Even if you go to the courts, they'll ask you, do you have money? The Baganda have a saying today, Omwavuta singa musango. You go to the court, they will start talking in the Latin. The judges will start talking in the Latin. You're a poor man, you run away. These same people are extremely very rich. They have corrupted almost every institution to the extent that you cannot run anywhere. So that's the reason why I told you, we used to blame Amin that he was not educated, that he was an educated man. But look at the class of these educated people with degrees, masters, whatever, PhDs, the way they are stealing, they are looting our country. Actually not stealing, but the way they are overlooting our country using books. The other day I saw these guys of NTV, because I always watch NTV. I saw these NRM people clapping because none of them can advise His Excellency, Mr. Tikahabura. None of them. They fear him. I saw them clapping that Mr. Tikahabura Museveni, His Excellency, has bought a new Airbus something. I told them I wanted actually to educate you. Amin bought Airbus. The first Airbus of Uganda was bought in 1976. And when he was running, actually when Obote was running Awandi Rutwa, they left 35 planes at Entebbe. Where are they? None of them. Did they disappear like Nido? The other day they used the taxpayers' money and they deceived you people of NTV and the country that Uganda has bought 3 airplanes. I sit on the budget committee, I sit on finance committee. We ask them, who own these 3 airplanes? Uganda has only 5%. 95% shares are for individuals. The same people who are saying that we are not going anywhere, what you do whatever you can, yet we are all candidates and deserve equal rights before electoral commission. But because some of you people, you fear them, you pretend that you don't know Uganda has ever had a fleet of planes at the airport. You go and borrow to rehabilitate Entebbe International Airport, but it is an individual benefits from Entebbe International Airport. The other day you used taxpayers' money to go and buy planes, of which Uganda has only 5%. 95 shares is taken by individuals. Of course you can't question such. I sit on budget committee and finance.
95% owned by individuals.
Yes, 95% is of individuals. I'm on NTV. And my speaker Kadaga is watching me. The other time they had 100%. When we are passing that money, yes, when we are passing that money, we ask them, who own these planes? When they come at Parliament, who is going to own these planes? They told us there were 3 people, including Mr. Kasaija himself, who was part of the shareholders. Then overnight, they changed the ownership. They said now Uganda owns it. Will own a certain 5%, 95%. You as a reporter of NTV, ask any government official, how many shares does Uganda have in Uganda Airlines? You will be shocked.
He's also running on the DP stroke People Power NUP ticket. Well, I also have Mr. Oscar Kihika. He's the Director Legal at the NRM. A lot has been said by Mr. Lutamaguzi, but we started this conversation from multi-party dispensation in Uganda, whether or not democracy has developed since 2005. And he says no. He says there are kidnappings, members of the security forces, subduing members of the opposition into voting for President Museveni and vice versa.
I think, you know, it's a little challenging to respond to Mr. Lutamaguzi because he really goes all over the place. You can't. It's difficult, to be honest with you. It's very difficult to have a discussion with this gentleman because he, in his motor-mouth way, he covers so many topics, and they are laced with a lot of lies. Okay, now let me first start with the first obvious slide that he gave. Right. Let's talk about the airlines. Okay. First of all, Mr. Lutagamas. Yes, in 1976, sir, Uganda did not have one single Airbus at all. Please, no. We had Boeing, the 707 Boeing jets, right? And for local flights, it used to be the Fokker Friendship. So please stop telling the public lies.
And the 95% being owned by individuals.
Again, that is lies. What happened? What actually happened? Was that in the process of incorporating the Uganda Airlines, there was a bit of a work for. You see, if a company is going to be government owned, right? You either create it, right? You either create it by an act of parliament, right? The act of parliament becomes the constituent documents for that what we now call parastatal. That's why, just to give you background. For example, Uganda Commercial Bank. There used to be a Uganda Commercial Bank Act. That was the constituent document for Uganda Commercial Bank, right? But the option that the government decided to take was to create, right, a company in its own right, which is owned by government, right? Now the problem is, and it was being registered as a private, like any other company that is a private entity. The legal challenge and the mistake that they did was actually not to consult. Minister of Works at that time didn't consult with the Solicitor General or the Attorney General's chambers. Was that who would then constitute the owner of the shares in this particular company? Because remember, they want this company this time round has got to be run as closely as possible as a private company. Therefore, you needed to have shares and you needed to have shareholders. In those circumstances, you would have what you call nominee shareholders who are representing the interests representing government. So in the process of that registration, actually there are two registrations, and this is what he was talking about, and which he failed to understand. Right. So the first one, if I recall very well, was where you had Matia Kasaija as one of the shareholders. I think it was the minister Azuba, right, who was also holding the shares. What was these were ministers representing Minister of Finance on the other hand, and representing works under which the airline failed. But they were the nominal shareholders holding it on behalf of government. Now then, later on, when it came to Parliament, there was a question. So okay, now where is government? Where is government in this? That's when this issue was been brought back to the Attorney General, who then corrected that situation. All right, and as it stands now, of course, government is the majority shareholder of the company, because that mistake was actually corrected. So he's wrong to say that this
and on the issue of kidnapping?
Now the issue of kidnappings, of course,
security intimidating people to vote from Museveni.
I'm not so sure about that one, but what I'm keenly aware of is there are indeed people who have been arrested. Others have been arrested in a manner that is rather disturbing, and obviously we're not happy, because look, we have the laws here, right? If you're going to arrest, if somebody has done something wrong, okay, arrest him, okay? You're entitled to keep him in custody for 48 hours, and then either you release him on bond or charge him before the courts of law.
So you're also not satisfied with the process?
Not satisfied with the way this thing goes, because, like I said, we're a party of the rule of law, and you see, people's rights must be respected. Okay. On the one hand, we have those rights, right? And on the other hand, those that are enjoying those rights must enjoy them responsibly. If you have done something wrong, please don't expect to sit back and the law enforcement officers will not come for you. They will come for you. If you're going to steal, you're going to be caught.
If you're going to steal, you're going to be caught.
If you're going to incite people to violence, you are going to be caught. But in the process of being caught, that's where the security forces must be mindful of people's rights. Okay, and there are codes of procedure on how this must be done, especially when you are curtailing citizens' freedoms.
Oscar Kihika is the director legal at the NRM. He wasn't alone. We also had Semakula Lutamaguzi, the MP Nakaseke South. He is also running on the DP Stroke People Power ticket. It's a little bit confusing, but that's the way things are within this country as far as politics.